Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Across the Dinerverse, searching for the heart and soul of America, one diner at a time. How you doing? I'm John Murphy, writer and producer on the TV series Innovation Nation, which airs Saturday mornings on CBS. I hope you check that out. And now I travel coast to coast, talking to people over Texas French toast, dreamsicle smoothies, and bone-in ham steak about their lives, who they're pissed off at, and how they feel about America. First of all, I gotta say, I got a lot of great positive feedback about Keith's story on last week's episode. He's the guy who was kidnapped by his own father and lived on the run for over 13 years. This is his music, by the way. He's playing with Blues Travelers frontman John Popper, so yeah, he's a great musician. So a big shout out to Karen and Sherry Hoskins, Leroy Schwartz, Amy Jane, Kristen Overstreet Davis, Brent Andrews, Kelly Vinglar Sharp, Kevin Sullivan, Kathy Lee, and Tracy Melnick. Big thank you for all your kind words about Keith and the Dinerverse podcast. I hope you keep following the show. And as you know, my goal is to do at least one podcast from a diner in all 50 states. And if you'd like to make a small contribution towards that goal, please visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Dinerverse. That's patreon.com/Dinerverse. I was very interested in doing an episode on journeys, because we all have them, right? Journeys in life, journeys in love, journeys on the road. Sometimes they're called seasons. It's a nice way to soften it. Oh, I'm in a different season now. Well, we're all on one big journey, and we really don't know how it's going to end, which is the exciting part for some and absolutely effing terrifying for others. So I wanted to find a diner somewhere that kind of reflected on this theme, and I did. In Utah, which is interesting because an entire group of people, the Mormons, journeyed there fleeing religious persecution in New York, Ohio, Illinois, Missouri for that little thing. What was it called? Polygamy, plural marriage. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like that. But the irony is America was partially established by pilgrims who themselves were fleeing religious persecution in England. And then, of course, they turned around and persecuted the Native Americans who tried to help them. But I digress. The diner I chose is the Bear Paw Cafe in a southern Utah town called St. George. It's 118 miles northwest of Las Vegas and the gateway to Zion National Park, which is a spectacular natural wonder, and I highly recommend that you do the big climb up to Angel's Landing. Terrifying, but worth every minute. Anyway, the owner is a young guy named Jackson, and the day I recorded this, the place was packed with a line out the door. Jackson, welcome to the Dinerverse.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for letting me come into the Bear Paw Cafe. You didn't start here in St. George, Utah, did you?
No, sir. So I was born and raised in Las Vegas, and I was adopted when I was about 11. And that's how I ended up in Ohio, the family that adopted me. And this is their restaurant. And when I was about 20 years old, my dad said, "Hey, I think you should go out to Utah and take over the restaurant and get involved with the family business." And I said, "Why not?"
But the restaurant itself, this Bear Paw Cafe, did not start in St. George, Utah, did it?
So no, that started up in Anchorage, Alaska. My grandfather started that several decades ago, and when he retired, he came down here in '95 and brought the restaurant with him, and it's been in the family ever since.
Why did he leave Anchorage, Alaska? Is he from Anchorage originally?
He was born and raised in Alaska, lived there all of his life. I honestly never thought he would leave there because he just loves Alaska so much.
Now, Utah is a very heavily Mormon, state. Is the family Mormon?
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right. So probably number one, Anchorage is really cold.
That it is.
And so number two, why not go to a place where it's a little bit warmer like St. George, Utah?
After I moved here and kind of spent some time here, I've come to see this place as kind of the Florida of the West, in that everybody comes here to retire. It's nice and warm, it's dry, it's not humid. It's just absolutely beautiful here. And so having seen it all for myself, I understand why he came here now.
I think it's very interesting, the connection that the state of Utah basically was formed and settled by Mormons leaving the east, coming out to the west.
Right.
And I like the connection that Your grandfather started a cafe and then traveled down here to the west as
Right.
well. And then St. George, Utah, there's a lot of people moving into this area from all parts of the country, a lot from California. And there's this like journey story. There's this migration story that's kind of going on. And you're now managing and running this restaurant.
Yes, sir.
How old are you?
I'm 23. I just turned
Holy
23
crap.
last month.
This place is hopping like crazy. It's packed, it's loud, people are enjoying their breakfasts. Did you expect this at all?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I didn't expect anything like this. I expected a few tumbleweeds to roll through, but nothing like what we've seen today.
What can you tell me about the St. George community? What is St. George all about?
Well, it's a stark contrast between the two main groups of people you've got here. You've got your young college-age kind of group, like myself, and then you've got your retired folk that come here, usually from up north, but also from all over, as you said, California. But it's pretty much just those two groups. It's quite the disparity. You've got a lot of people coming in from California and just, quite frankly, from all over the country. And so it's getting to be a family city. I mean, the nightlife has exploded. New buildings are going up left and right and center. Industry is just booming, and lots of new businesses, lots of new folk, and so it's a metropolis, really.
Let me ask you a question. So Utah is predominantly a Mormon state. I did some research. St. George is about 64.5% Mormon,
Right.
4.5% Catholic, and then there's everybody. There's
Right.
everybody else. How is this influx of people affecting the faith-based dynamic? And is it upsetting the community at all that so many different people are coming here?
I think you've definitely got your people that are upset about that. You've got people that are kind of set in their ways and they like things as they are, and so they don't like lots of new traffic, lots of new people, new neighborhoods and buildings. There are people who wish it would stay as it were. That's definitely a big group right there. But
Would you say that's the majority of people who...
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that's honestly kind of the minority, and that
Okay.
minority is shrinking. People are kind of coming around to all the changes that are happening in St. George because a lot of it is refreshing and it's nice, it's pleasant. And
It's becoming a melting pot.
it's a melting pot. It's a confluence. You've finally got some, shall we say, diversity, really, and not just in ethnicity, but in faith, in socioeconomic status, and everything. You're getting a little bit of everybody, and I think it's pretty cool to see, especially as it relates to faith. Like you mentioned, St. George is about 64 roughly % Mormon, but when I first moved here, I can't remember ever seeing a church of any other faith other than the LDS faith. There were no Catholic churches, no Baptist churches, Presbyterian, nothing like that. And so over these past few years, you've got new people and new faiths moving in, and so it's starting to become a diverse community religiously.
And how does everybody get along?
Quite honestly, people are taking it better than I thought they would, in my opinion. From my observation, people are more open-minded and they're accepting of different faiths, people coming from different walks of life. It's not this bubble that I expected, really, where everybody who was of the Mormon faith looked at the others as pariahs, like they were the black sheep, so to speak. I was afraid of that happening, but no, everyone's really been quite accepting, and they're embracing the fact that you're getting a whole new world of people.
For people listening to this podcast who have heard the term Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, what does that mean, Latter-day Saints? Just so people have an understanding.
The premise of our faith, what it's predicated upon, is a restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so you've heard of the Book of Mormon. Many people have. The Book of Mormon we sustain as another testimony of Jesus Christ, much like the New Testament, the Old Testament, the Bible. It's a record of his ministry to people outside of Europe,
the Holy
and Jerusalem,
Land?
the Holy Land. Thank you. It's predicated upon a latter-day restoration of the gospel that Jesus Christ himself established when he was alive. And so that term latter-day, we use that to just describe the time period that we're living in. And we are waiting for a second coming, essentially.
Tell me the biggest misconception other Americans, other people have about Mormons that they get wrong all the time.
Oh, this will be interesting. Well, I mean, I could go a million different directions with this. Do Mormons have multiple wives? The answer is no.
So, a little historical sidebar for a moment. The Mormons who settled in the Utah Territory and were led there by Brigham Young were under tremendous pressure to end the legality of plural marriages, or polygamy. And it wasn't until the LDS Church issued their 1890 manifesto renouncing that practice that the U.S. granted Utah admittance into the nation as the 45th state back in 1896.
There are a couple of offshoots, shall we say, of the Mormon faith that was established in the 1800s. There are a couple of offshoots and different interpretations of the Book of Mormon, different practices, one of those being polygamy, plural wives, and I think they do call themselves the Fundamentalist LDS, FLDS. Some people colloquially just call them the poligs or polygamists, but you do have a few different offshoots of our faith.
Do you have those communities in Utah?
We do, and actually just right around here in St. George. You'll see them, they kind of have their own communities outside of St. George proper. They just kind of want to live their way, and they don't want anyone to impede their lifestyle or kind of introduce any other ideology, and so they kind of keep it to themselves. You'll see them come into town every now and then for work and for supplies. They all kind of dress similarly, have similar hairstyles.
Have you ever seen them in here?
You know, come to think of it, I don't think I have.
Okay.
Most of the time when I see them out in public, it's shopping, mostly like Costco, Walmart. I think they just kind of come into town for the necessities, really. They're not so much on entertainment and leisure.
So you, as a 23-year-old man, you're not on track to have a dozen wives?
If I had a dozen, I wouldn't probably ever have to clean my house again, so I wouldn't. There are pros and cons to it. I guess I wouldn't mind, but wow. But I don't think my parents want to attend that many weddings, so I think they're gonna ask me to stick to one.
I've heard that there are multiple heavens that you can ascend to. There are places to go to when you die. And I've heard that you can get your own planet. You can become your own god. Are all those? Is that crap or is that actual?
There's a fundamental, truthful premise to this, and then I think people get kind of creative with it, and so they start to draw crazy conclusions about it. I'll tell you this, so just plain simple. Yes, we do believe that there are different kingdoms of heaven and different according degrees of glory to each of those.
Are those degrees of glory achieved through works or through faith?
It's a little bit of both. There's a fine line, and faith without works is dead. That's a common creed that we have, right? We do not believe that works alone are what get you to heaven. And so, in other words, we don't believe that you can quote unquote earn your salvation. This is because the atonement, the Jesus Christ sacrifice, was exactly that, a sacrifice. It was a gift freely given. It was our salvation. It was his atonement. It was something he did out of love for all of us. Those works do translate to blessings that we enjoy, not only in this life and in the next. But boilerplate answer is faith in the Lord Jesus Christ is what we primarily believe to be our salvation.
I'm curious because the symbol that represents Christianity typically is the cross, and on the Church of the LDS Mormon churches, there is no cross on the exterior of the building where you would see a cross on a Catholic church or Episcopal church or something like that.
Right.
What is the reasoning behind that?
And so the reason behind that is we try as a church and as a faith to not have idols or symbols. We don't have crosses up because we repudiate the image or we condemn it in any way. It's purely we try to focus on very simple, humble beliefs and ideologies that our Heavenly Father is who we ought to worship.
So you say you're 23.
Yes, sir.
Are you married?
I am not.
How can you be married? You're running a huge, busy restaurant here.
Right.
It's crazy. How many hours do you put in a week here?
Oh, I hope my dad doesn't listen to this. He's me mad. On the low end, about 60. On the high end,
low end 60 hours.
Low end 60, and I have definitely hit 100-hour work weeks several times in my 3 years here.
So there's no time for dating.
I'm just thinking of all the people who would just love to hear me answer this question. They're like, because I get crap all the time from people about work-life balance or lack thereof. And so it's just kind of funny to me.
Traditionally, within the Mormon faith, you tend to marry younger, don't you?
We do, yes, sir.
And you tend to start procreating pretty quickly, don't you?
That we do.
Yeah.
Generally, we do.
Yeah, so you're behind the timeline here.
Statistically, I'm way behind the curve.
Yeah. Your mother and father must be exasperated by now.
You would think so, but actually they're pretty kind of relaxed about the whole thing. Although we are LDS, we're not from Utah, and where I'm going with this is to say that the whole drive to get married real young and have kids right off the rip, and just, it is definitely a Utah culture kind of cornerstone.
All right, so the Bear Paw was so busy, you can hear it, how busy it was, that Jackson got called away to take care of some things. But I ended up talking with a woman named Janessa, who was embarking on the biggest journey of them all.
Oh, well, I'm a new mom.
Wow, now that's a journey.
Yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 27.
Okay, so you're first-time mom at 27.
Yeah.
How did your pregnancy go?
It was a rough one.
Was it really?
I was sick for most of it.
Oh.
Yeah. The birth experience was a little scary. I had to do a C-section.
Right, emergency C-section.
Yeah.
I'm just going to share this with you. So my wife and I both had scheduled C-sections. Not me, she did. Why do men do that? Why do men always mansplain, what the birthing process is like? Because from the man perspective, it's ridiculous, and I apologize. But my wife had a medical situation where a scheduled C-section was the safer method to have the kid. And I'm telling you, both operations, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, baby's out, perfect. She healed great. We were both going, why would any woman want to go through the natural birth process? I don't understand. What is the concept? What is the badge of honor of doing that when you can just and it's pain-free and everybody's happy and safe and it's 9 minutes and you're in and out? Would you agree after your experience?
So the C-section, it was a little bit of a shock.
Were you looking forward to the birthing process?
I was. I've heard my cousins talk about it all the time, where they got to hold the baby right away.
Right.
And it was kind of like a bonding experience, and I wasn't able to do that.
All right.
It's a little emotional, but...
So I do see that you have tears in your eyes. Do you feel like you missed out on something?
A little bit, yeah.
Do you feel like you're less of a mom for that, for some reason? Please don't tell me you feel like less of yourself because of that.
It's...
Okay, good.
I was hoping to do that one-on-one bonding experience where they put her on my chest.
Right.
And, I don't know. I wasn't able to see her right away.
How long did it take before you were allowed to see her?
Just a couple minutes, but for me on the table, it kind of felt longer.
Your baby's still yours.
Yeah.
And she's still with you, and you're still mom to her, right?
Oh, yeah.
And she's healthy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When they handed her to me, I felt a little bit better about it, just because.
Tell me about that emotional experience, being a woman, growing a life inside of you, and anticipating that moment when that life becomes a living human being. What was that anticipation like? Because I could tell that you're really disappointed that you missed those 2 minutes.
Yeah, I wish I could go back and relive it.
Do you really?
I do, yeah. My husband was very supportive. As far as when we were coming home, I got a little emotional because I wasn't able to do anything, but my husband did all of it.
So how old is your daughter now? What is her name?
She's Amelia.
Amelia?
Uh-huh.
How old is she now?
She's now almost 12 months.
So a year?
Yeah, a year.
Congratulations. Yeah. So how do you feel as a mom now?
Oh, great.
Of course.
Tired. I'll be honest, I'm very tired.
Do you feel like you want to be a stay-at-home mom, or you like having the balance of being a mother and working?
I like it right now, but I would love to be a stay-home mom, but just right now it's,
You were born here in Utah?
I was.
Obviously, big Mormon state. Are you guys Mormons?
We were.
Your husband is smiling. So you were.
We were. We're kind of.
You're questioning the faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's bringing you to that decision to question the faith?
Well, lately we've been listening to John Jolin. He's a Mormon Stories podcaster, and he does a lot of research on the Mormon Church because he used to be LDS as well.
Right.
And we've been kind of finding some things out that are a little bit of a shock. I don't want to get too much into it because it's...
everybody goes through a crisis of faith, and that's part of our life journey, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of our faith journey sometimes. We all of us face a crisis of faith. I don't trust God all the time. I trust in my own will. I trust in my own thinking. I push Christ out.
Yeah.
So I know what crisis of faith is all about. So what is the crisis of faith that you're experiencing as a husband and wife?
I mean, I still believe there's a Christ out there.
It's kind of hard to hold on to it when you see everything that's going on in the world right now, isn't it?
Yeah, but I have to say that I'm a lot happier without being expected to go to church every Sunday.
So you felt the pressure of
I did.
Of living up to a Mormon ideal.
Yeah, growing up, women are kind of taught your wifely duty is to take care of the kids and to cook
and that's
clean,
it.
And that's it. And
even in this modern age, that's still kind of the number one rule.
Yeah, for young women is what they call it. We did a lot of bakering, learning women duties basically growing up, and I didn't like that. And they always reminded you to find a missionary when you got to a certain age. You had to find a righteous man, get married in the temple. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like they were brainwashing women. I thought I was worth more than that. Like I wanted a spouse to be equal with me and not feel like he was the head of the household.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you feel the Mormon church tries to stick its nose in your private business and in the bedroom?
A little bit.
They tell you what you can and can't do?
Yeah. Especially when you're growing up, they say that you can't do a lot of inappropriate things or even kiss, or you had to...
What comes underneath the topic of inappropriate things growing up as a woman in the Mormon church that they tell you about?
They said that you can't date till you're 16, and you had to double date because they said that men can sometimes be inappropriate and they want to kiss or make out or do more than that.
Right. I don't disagree.
Yeah, right?
Guys are guys. We're going to try stuff.
Don't get me wrong. I thought about it, too, when I was little. Growing up, especially in high school, But like the church, if they find out that you did that kind of stuff, it's kind of like...
What happens?
Depending on what you do, they...
Is there a checklist?
Luckily, I've never had to be questioned by my bishop.
Who's a man?
Yeah, who's a man. One of the things that we've learned that we wish that the church didn't ask young adults this, that it should just be their parents, because they feel like, and they're alone, too, in the room.
All right, so wait a second. If there's an issue of improper behavior as a teenager, the parents don't deal with it, the bishop deals with it?
If they find out. There was a story about a girl that did inappropriate stuff, and I guess the bishop found out, and he had her sent to his bishop room, questioned her about how far she went, where he touched her, inappropriate questions. And I guess the parents didn't know yet. They kind of found out when she was called, so. Yeah, luckily I didn't have to deal with that, but.
So those things bring you this crisis of faith.
Yeah.
That it's not about a relationship with God or Jesus Christ, it's really about control, it's about really following the rules.
Yeah.
Living up to an ideal. And the thing about Jesus Christ, if you really believe it, is that those things are forgiven if you go to and confess, right?
Yeah.
If you, in your heart, without a bishop, without the church council, with just in your heart, go to Christ and say, I committed a sin, however you want to define it, but it's honest and authentic, then that's where the forgiveness comes. Mm-hmm. Not through an interrogation by some church elder, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for talking with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Janessa, and I wish you and your husband a very happy life and continue on your journey, and may it be long and loving.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, so the Bear Paw Cafe is wall-to-wall Mormons at this point, and I ran into another one, obviously. His name is Levi, very Mormon name. And Levi had just ended several journeys and was starting a brand new one, and he is a Gen Zer. And who says Gen Zs don't have drive?
So I'm 24. People always joke that, I'm 24 physically, but emotionally I'm 45. So when I graduated high school, I went and lived in Argentina for a year.
Is that part of your Mormon mission?
Yeah,
okay.
Actually. So I grew up Mormon. I lived in Argentina for a year, which usually you're a 2-year thing.
What was that cool experience like? A Mormon from Utah living and working in Argentina?
So, I mean, in Utah, you grow up especially if you're Mormon, you grow up a pretty, like, sheltered, I'd say, life, because you don't really see a lot of the outside world, because it's pretty closed off as a Mormon, because everybody here, at least, especially back then, culturally was more or less the same. So when you go to another place, especially if you don't have a lot of travel experience, it's really eye-opening. Especially in another country where they speak Spanish, you don't even know the language. So going there, I lived in the capital city of Buenos Aires. For me personally, I just love seeing like new people and culture. So it was really cool because it's not like normal travel where you go and you do all the tourist stuff. You live there, you get to talk to the normal people, you live like a normal person, you live in like the slums. So like I'm not actively Mormon anymore. Like I wouldn't class myself that, but like that still to this day was one of my favorite experiences just because.
Why did you walk away from the faith?
When I got home, I got married, and I married kind of, I don't know if you know much about the Mormon church, but when you get married in a Mormon church, you get married in like a temple. It's like this sacred thing. But I married my high school sweetheart who waited for me while I was out there, and then...
She Mormon? She was
also Mormon, okay. Yes. We were married for like a year and a half, and then we just kind of like grew apart. I just had always lived life doing what other people wanted me to. That was kind of why I went on my mission, why I stayed in the church up until that point.
Because you were expected to.
Yeah, because I was expected to. It was, and my mom, even like my parents were always, because my dad stopped going to church like 10, 15 years ago. And my mom and dad always told me like, you can do what you want. Like, we don't care if you do it. You need to want to do this for yourself. And like at that time I wanted to a little bit. But it's more just the expectation that this is what you need to do. And that was kind of part of the reason I got married was because that's what you should do.
So did you feel like all of these things were being dictated to you by traditions and religion and that type of thing?
To an extent, yes.
You weren't living your own authentic life?
Yeah,
you were doing...
I was doing what it was expected. What's the standard, what's the norm. And so when I got back, I was married for like a year and a half, and we'd started to just grow apart. We're good friends now. Like, I have no ill feelings towards her whatsoever. But like at some point I just decided that I needed to live my own life, and it conflicted with what she wanted to do, and we talked about it. It was very amicable. We just kind of walked away and said, it's better to do this now than in 10 years. That was kind of when I took a hold of my own life, and I started making it my goal to always pick some aspect of my life to improve or to like become a more unique and interesting person. A month ago I got back from Marine Corps basic training, so
you joined the Marines?
I did. That was one of the things I did. Got my bachelor's degree.
It's kind of interesting, this journey that you're on, because trying to live the Mormon faith is a certain journey of rules, expectations. You have to do what you're told.
Yeah.
And absolutely, the Marines.
It's the same. It's the same
way.
Thing. Yeah.
Only much more militaristic, obviously, and much more brutal, I would think.
And then it's very similar, but like the feeling is similar, but a little different. And like for me, because I lived a solid 2 or 3 years just by myself in Utah while I was going to school and working, and that was kind of when I realized that like the military / criminal justice life, because my ultimate goal is to join the FBI. And one thing that I felt like I've always kind of lacked on is physical fitness, which obviously the Marines helps with, and then mental fortitude, like being able to push my mind to the same limits that I want my body to, because I feel like I've always given up in my mind before I gave up anywhere else. And Marine Corps, the boot camp definitely fills that part of your life. Like they make you push until you really, like, I pushed my body to the point where it broke, and I was mad because my mind wanted to keep going,
Joining the Marines wasn't a hard sell.
No, not for me. I grew up, like, my grandpa served in World War II. I have cousins in every single branch of the military. My dad's been a police officer for 25 years.
So the Mormon faith is pro-American, pro-military, taking care of the country.
Pro-nationalism, I'd say. Like, it's pro whatever country you're based in. They're never going to tell you not to defend or be proud of your country. Right. It's pro-freedom. It's pro-choice. Mm-hmm. So any organization that promotes your ability to choose, I would say they're for.
What is the biggest misconception people have about Mormons?
The one that I've heard that has always just blown my mind is that they're polygamists. So
weren't the founding fathers of Mormonism, weren't they polygamists?
They were polygamists, and the church practiced polygamy in its early days of its restoration, but they got rid of it at some point. And I think part of that comes to it. I'd say the other thing that a lot of people believe about Mormons is they take, because Mormons don't drink, they don't smoke tobacco, they don't do drugs. They take that and they make, I think in their mind, they twist it to, they don't live a normal life. And none of that's true. Like, they live normal lives. Like, they're just normal people. because like in every religion, you have people who take like the commandments
Absolutely.
or whatever and make them like way more than what they are.
Yeah.
But if you take them at what's actually taught and at their face value, then they're not that odd. Like
No.
if you really look at it.
Yeah, man is the one who gets involved and screws up faith.
Yeah, for sure.
Because man tries to control and manipulate the situation to their advantage, control
Yeah.
power over other
Yeah,
people.
you see the same thing like in the Middle East, I would say.
Do you feel like the Mormon Church, and you say that you left the Mormon Church, is it manipulative in a negative way?
The church, no, I don't think so. Like I always, because there's a lot of people who are like ex-Mormon, quotation marks, who like leave the church and have extremely negative feelings towards it and like almost attack it and its members. I personally have never been that way because while I was there, I never felt any negative feelings towards the church. I just felt like it wasn't who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like it was part of who I was as a person, and that's why I left. So like, I think the church is a fantastic organization. I think it helps a lot of people. They do a lot of humanitarian work. Like, I don't have any ill feelings at all towards the church. I don't think the church itself is manipulative. But kind of like you said, I do feel like there are a lot of people who twist it to be manipulative. And I feel like that's true in any religion. Like, you get Catholics, you can get Muslims, any religion you have that extremism where they take it to try to manipulate people.
Look at the Crusades. Catholic Church, the Crusades, did a lot of killing and murdering in the name of Jesus Christ for that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you drink caffeine?
Yes. And I did while I was in the church, too. Like, caffeine, they never tell you not to drink caffeine. They tell you not to drink coffee and, like, black tea.
Yeah.
But, like, everybody in the church drinks. So, like, if you know anything about Utah, have you heard of, like, Swig or Fizz and stuff like that? I always call them the Mormon bars, where it's, like, soda shops. They put all the flavors in and make mixed soda drinks.
It's like, you don't know how many Jewish people I know who eat tons of bacon.
Yeah.
Love pork. Love it.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to eat it if you follow the Jewish faith.
Yeah, and, like, there are some people who will tell you that Mormons aren't supposed to drink caffeine, but no church leader, no official has ever said don't drink caffeine. It's coffee and then, like, black tea. Like, even herbal tea they drink just fine.
Dancing okay?
Dancing's fine, yeah.
All right.
They throw dances.
That's right.
Not dirty dancing, but...
Can I ask you a sensitive question? And I'm only asking it out of just to be curious and understand.
No, absolutely.
The Mormon underwear thing, the special underwear, the undergarments.
Yeah, the garments.
Yeah. Do you, and you were married, so do you actually wear those when you're making love to a woman?
No.
You're not having sex through these holes in bed sheets and through underwear.
Absolutely not. So
it's skin on skin. You're doing it the real old-fashioned way.
No, yeah. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to. I've never heard of that. Like, the way it's set up, as a woman, you wouldn't even be able to do that because there's no openings down there or anything.
In the women's garments, there's no openings.
No, it's solid.
Okay.
So
all right.
And the men's is just like, depending on what style you get, it's just like boxers. Like, it's not.
Right.
So you can take it. The only time you really like, they even tell you, like, if you're exercising, you don't wear them. If you're doing anything that would, like, soil them or make them, like, dirty or ruin them, you don't wear them. You wear them under your normal clothes. But if you're going to the gym, doing yard work, stuff like that, you don't ever wear them.
Well,
so
thank you for clarifying
I'd say
that.
lovemaking is a definite no. I've never.
I was going to say it takes all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
Because, God made sex. It's a great thing.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with that.
I would say sex, I don't think God intended for people to have sex with a bunch of clothes on.
No, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't want it to be that way. That would take away the fun of it.
What is your next journey? You are in the Marines.
So,
what do you want to do?
So I just finished basic training. My next journey, so I go back in a week to Camp Pendleton in California, where I'll start my infantry training, and that's about 15 weeks. And then I'll go to the East Coast of Virginia, where I'll finish my training, and then from there they'll assign me what job I get, and then I'll know, like, my duty station stuff from there.
Well, Levi, as an American, thank you for signing up and working hard to defend our country.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for your
Thank you
sacrifice.
for your support. That's really all, like, obviously I haven't done that much, and when people tell me now, like, oh, thanks for your sacrifice, you feel weird because, like, especially as, like, someone just out of boot camp like me, because you really don't feel like you've
sacrificed. But you will be.
But you will. And, like, if you look at it from, like, an outside point of view, like, I left my family, my phone, I didn't have anything for 13 weeks, and I got yelled at, treated a little subpar, to say the least,
Subhuman.
Yeah, so there is some sacrifice to it, but, like, I don't know. And that's what, like, even from the, like, combat veterans who I've talked to, it's always kind of a weird thing when they say thank you for your sacrifice, but I don't know. But you're welcome.
Well, thank you for your future sacrifice and your time, and your putting your life on the line.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you safety I wish
Thank
you
you.
much success in your new journey.
Yeah.
And Levi, nice meeting you, and welcome, and thank you for being part of the Dinerverse.
Yeah, thank you for interviewing me.
Obviously, in the heart of Mormon country, I was kind of surprised when this dude sat down in the chair. Hello, sir. What's your name?
I'm Max.
Hi, Max. Where are you from?
I'm from Philadelphia.
What the hell are you doing all the way in St. George, Utah?
Believe it or not, I'm on a trip with my family and girlfriend.
How old are you?
I'm 29 years old.
29. Not married yet, huh?
Not married.
Is this girlfriend the keeper?
We'll see.
Tell me about your journey. What's been your life journey so far at the age of 29?
Oh man, I don't know how to answer that. I feel like there's a lot of different takes.
It could be an emotional journey. It could be a life journey. It could be a physical journey.
It's scary for me to think about journeys, but I'd say just to give you a brief overview, if I've just met you, grew up in Philadelphia, went to college in D.C., ended up studying civil engineering, graduated, lived in D.C. for a while, and work in construction management.
And why did you choose to come to St. George, Utah?
It's actually just a stop on our route between Zion and Vegas. And me being here now is part of a journey, being here with my family and my girlfriend. I'm 29, I have a sister who's 30. Every year we seem to talk about, will this be our last family trip? I've been lucky enough that my family's gotten to travel. It's a big part of our family. And every year, the last few years, we ask ourselves at the end, is this the last family trip as we get older? And here we are again. I didn't think it was going to happen, and we're here again, which I think is a significant part of our journey as a family. And as well, this is the first trip that I've brought a significant other.
How serious is this girl?
We've been dating for a year. I'd say it's pretty serious.
Right.
We're planning to move in together in a few months.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal for me. I've never had a relationship before, a serious relationship, and so it's been a year. We spend every day together,
Right.
and so everyone asks us if we're going to get married.
Yeah,
Even strangers
yeah.
on the street ask us if we're going to get married.
Do you spend a lot of time staying over at each other's places right now?
Yes, we
So
do.
you're kind of used to cohabitating at least a little bit.
Yes, we do. I have a roommate, but have a pretty nice apartment, even in Philadelphia, and so
I will say, from life experience, it will change. I mean, having somebody stay overnight or you staying over at their place is fine, and you kind of play house a little bit.
Yeah.
But when it becomes real, and
yeah.
it's 24/7, day in and day out, it's a different story.
we'll see. Yeah.
And the test of the relationship will be how you survive a crisis. Have you gone through any crises in your relationship yet?
I don't think so.
Then
I don't think so.
Then it's not a real relationship.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's not real yet. You still have to go through some major upheavals because that's the test, right?
Yeah.
That's the test of a character. A person's character is revealed in a crisis.
Yeah.
And so we'll find out.
Yeah. I guess I could almost say we're lucky we haven't had that yet, but
Are you a Christmas family or a Hanukkah family?
we're a Hanukkah family.
Okay. So what's it like for a Jew to be in Mormon territory?
It's great. I personally find it very interesting. You feel like you're an outsider coming in, visiting a different culture, and we definitely, look around at people. Everyone looks the same as us, but we're like, they're probably a little different than us, and
So this particular community is 64.5% Mormon, 4.5% Catholic. Judaism, I think it's probably less than 1/10%.
we're always surprised. Wherever you go, there's always someone.
But you
So there's one Jew.
You would think it's kind of a desert area. You'd think there'd be the tons of Jews out here. You guys love the desert.
I think we learned there's other places out there.
So I've talked to several people who are Mormons, and they've shared a lot about their Mormonism, and their Mormon faith, and misconceptions about the Mormon faith. You're Jewish. What can you tell us about the Jewish faith that people get wrong all the time?
It's hard for me to answer that. I grew up in a fairly Jewish community, not a community that's 100% Jewish, but a community that's 25% Jewish or so, that, just the culture, everybody kind of knows Jews. So it's hard for me to know what people perceive of the Jewish community. You certainly hear some pretty bad things, but I don't think that that's what a typical person thinks of somebody being Jewish. But I would say that probably like any religion, there's so many different interpretations of Judaism and the way people live being Jewish.
Yeah, even within the Jewish faith, there's different divisions.
You have ultra-Orthodox who are extremely observant. They stick to themselves. You have extremely liberal Jews who really take their own interpretations of traditional practices, and they, even though pork might not be isn't kosher, they really push the boundaries and they'll eat pork, but they'll take the ideas of, they'll be interpretive of it, and they'll keep Shabbat, but they'll take it their own way, and they'll really think about it and take it spiritually. So I would say something that I find very interesting is Judaism is a very living religion, because there's an aspect of being born into the religion. In a way, it gives somebody who's Jewish liberties to practice it in their own way. There's kind of a way that you're born Jewish, so you can kind of interpret it your own way. You don't have to. There's not a church figure. There's not a pope that's saying this is how you have to practice. You have your own liberty to kind of practice it your way, which gives a big variation of ways that you can practice Judaism, be Jewish, which is really interesting. A similar concept to being American. If you're born in America, you're American. Nobody's telling you're American, you're not. If you're born in America, there's this idea of you're American, you live it the way you want to live, and we have such diversity here. And then also just that the structure of Judaism, you don't have as strict of a church structure. Mm-hmm. I don't know as much about Christianity, but that's kind of my understanding. Some sects can be a stricter church.
Well, I do have some Jewish friends who get a bill every year from the temple that says you owe 25% this year, or whatever.
That's true. That's more local synagogue. You won't have somebody in Jerusalem or somewhere in New York City saying this is what has to happen. It's your local community that you can choose to ascribe to or not to. That's by choice by the individual. Very grassroots, I would say.
And I find that's the same thing in the Mormon community.
Interesting.
Very grassroots, very insular, very insulated. They have their own traditions and customs, and they really kind of mingle with their own. They don't step far outside of that realm. Yeah. And so there's a lot of similarities between Judaism and Mormonism.
Perhaps it's a result of populations that were persecuted. I know there's a history of persecution also in Mormonism, or Mormon history. Also maybe because both religions haven't had an environment where they could be the main state religion. I mean, Judaism, you have it in Israel now, but that's a modern state where there's ideas of democracy, so there's separation of church, of synagogue and state there. But both religions don't have a history where they've been able to be the state religion, where it kind of maybe creates more of a top-down hierarchical structure. So,
yeah. Do you think if you moved to St. George, Utah and opened a bagel store, it'd be successful?
You tell me. I think anywhere a bagel store would be successful. There's a lot of good Jewish food out there. Yeah, there's a lot. I'm very proud to be Jewish. There's great cultural aspects of being Jewish. Individuality is a big one, which you can probably attribute to there being so many comedians, people in the arts, musicians. There's such a strong sense of individuality.
But I think that's interesting because I just spoke to a guy named Levi before you who left the Mormon church because he wanted to find his individuality. That's his journey.
That's interesting, yeah.
So they're similar, but they're different.
Yeah, in fact, actually what you will find is a lot of people who try to find themselves and look back to Judaism. There's a lot of people, because Judaism is also a culture. There's a religion, there's also a culture. Yeah. A lot of people grow up very secular and just feel kind of lost in the American community that you have now, the transience in society, the shifting of...
You live in Philadelphia. What's that situation like there with the crime and inflation? How's that going?
It's interesting. Philadelphia is amazing. I love it. Grew up there, so I definitely have some pride. It's also an amazing city. Crime is definitely an issue. I was in D.C. before that issue. You hear from New York, you hear people, all over here. It's a thing. I personally have never had an incident. I feel safe there, but you hear about it all the time.
Do you feel Americans have more in common, or are we splitting apart and going down the rabbit hole?
I think rabbit hole.
Do you really?
From what I can tell, back in the day, you had your 3 channels, everybody, TV channels, news sources, and paper. Everybody had kind of the same narrative. Today, there's 1,000 social media platforms with each having 10,000 narratives coming to you every day with algorithms that try to tail messaging to you. a huge difference between rural and urban America. The haves and have-nots have gotten greater. Financial opportunities are getting harder to come by. Being 29, it's harder to buy a home. So where do you live? Do you rent? Then there's some people that have hundreds of thousands of acres all over the country.
So do you feel America needs a reboot?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't even know what that would mean.
Max, great meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for being on the Diniverse.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Now, the owner of the Bear Paw Cafe, Jackson, came back to my table, and I wanted to ask him about St. George specifically. See, the state has a history, not all of it good, and in fact, Utah was the first territory in the 19th century West to allow slave labor with both black and Native Americans at the time. And St. George was part of that past. I see that there's a big sign on the mountain back over here. It says Dixie on it, and I did do some research, and I learned that Dixie was actually coined by Brigham Young back in the 1860s when St. George was settled, populated, and they were trying to turn it into a cotton community. But now the term Dixie seems to be canceled, very politically incorrect. There was a Dixie High School, Dixie Elementary School, Dixie College. Did the Dixie College name get changed?
They did change. They are now Utah Tech University.
And how did that go over?
One fall semester, the university came out and released an official statement, hey, we are looking at changing the name of the university. We're floating a few different ideas. We're open to...
Was it changing it because of the Dixie name and its association with racism and slavery?
Exactly that, yes, sir.
And how did the community feel about that?
It was a split right down the middle of people who absolutely repudiated the idea that Dixie had anything to do with racism. They wanted Dixie State University to keep the name. They hated the idea of the name change. And then the other half of it was Dixie needs to go. This university has no place having this in their name. It's just in poor taste.
Right.
It's got to go.
The name was changed just to be, do you think, to be politically correct or to address real issues and try to just right a wrong?
I think it depends on who you ask, and the only difference there is what conviction the person had on the issue. There's some people who were kind of superficially involved, where they were just excited to see a change toward social activism, progressivism, and so forth, and people thought it was a great move. They were happy about it publicly. Then there were others who really had more deeply held convictions that the name needed to be changed and that it was in poor taste.
A journey of progression.
Yeah, it seems to be that way, kind of anywhere you go anymore.
Absolutely. So what do you think your journey is going to be? Do you see yourself running this cafe for 20, 30 years?
I don't see it as my end-all, be-all, no. I'm in college myself, and I'm studying accounting, and I have dreams of going to law school after that, and so...
But you're in college, studying accounting, and running a restaurant.
Yes, sir.
No wonder you're not married, and no wonder you're putting in 100-hour weeks. That's crazy.
That's the other side of the puzzle, yes, sir. And I'm pretty involved with my church, and I have some responsibilities there, and so that takes up a good amount of time. Sleep and I are not well acquainted. So if my dad hears this podcast, he's going to be laughing his butt off, or he's going to be pissed at high hell, because, I'm just always working one place or the other.
Well, thank you for letting me bring the Diniverse podcast into your cafe. It's been a real pleasure and an honor. And welcome to the Diniverse.
It's been a pleasure for me, too. Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming. And this was a lot of fun, and watching different customers come all over the dining room to come talk with you and kind of hearing snippets of conversation. I mean, it's been a real privilege to have you guys here.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Across the Diniverse. A big thank you to Jackson and the entire crew at the fabulous Bear Paw Cafe. Check them out at bearpawcafe.com. How could you forget that? Bear Paw Cafe, all one word, .com. And if you're ever in St. George, you gotta take in their food. It is tremendous. And for anyone who wants to give me a little love to keep bringing this podcast to you each and every week, please visit patreon.com/Diniverse. That's patreon.com/Diniverse. Theme music by Keith Brock and the Kings Who Rock. Keep on rocking, boys. And Across the Diniverse. searching for the heart and soul of America, one diner at a time. I'm John Murphy. What's your story?